Welcome to a pivotal moment in the world of broadcast as we proudly present the Men's Mental Health Show featuring the renowned Larry Mabry in collaboration with the Maassen Group. This essential exploration of men's mental health wouldn't be possible without the invaluable support of RainerAvenueRadio.world. Now, let's dive into this crucial conversation with Larry Mabry and the Maassen Group. Your mental well-being matters. Here's Larry Mabry.
Hey, what's going on, guys? How are you guys doing? Beautiful October 13th, 2025. This Monday. Just wanted to tap in. Question for you guys. Just curious to see, how are you feeling in this moment? Today, I want to kind of talk about balance. For those people that have been tapped in the last couple of weeks, I've talked quite a bit about several things. I've talked about the father wound. I've talked about the mother wound. We've talked about the inner child. Today, I want to talk about balance. And so, question for you, what does balance mean to you? And I want to kind of start with a story. I remember when I was a small young man and I was playing with my dad. We were just playing around. And, I was about 5 years old. And I don't know if you guys ever played those games with your parents. We were on the carpet in Detroit. My stepdad, and we were wrestling. And he was kind of throwing me back, and I was like, hey, trying to get him. He's like 6'4". I'm 5 years old. I don't know. Maybe I was like 2'4" or something. I was pretty small. And we're wrestling. And, I kept with all my might trying to, put him down. He was on his knees, and we were just wrestling, just playing or whatever. And I could not beat him, and I just kept trying to really be with all my might trying to overtake him, and I just couldn't do it, and he would just hold me down, and I'm just fighting to try to get up or whatever, and it was almost like he wasn't even trying, right? And so later on, we started talking, and I had a conversation with my dad back then, and I was like, why wasn't I able to like beat you? And he talked about, the fact that one, he was a little bit stronger, but he talked about balance. Because I kept falling. He's like, you got to get your balance. He kept pushing me. I kept falling. And it's like, what I realized in that situation, I was very, very frustrated, right? I was exerting all this energy to beat my dad, right? Or my stepdad in that situation. I'm fighting hard, wrestling, extending myself, putting in all this energy. And, I'm looking at him, and he was just pushing me with little effort. And ironically, if you guys can just picture, so we're on the carpet, he's on his knees, he's up like that, and I'm standing fully, and I'm just attacking him, and he's just pushing me like with ease or whatever. He's like, you got to be balanced. He just kept pushing me. And later in my life, I started thinking about that. And so as life kind of unfolded, I noticed that, I was putting more energy into, positions, or I was putting more energy into, real estate at the time, or, at the time I was engaged with somebody, I was putting more energy into that, or in school. And every single time I put a lot of energy into those things, I noticed, I would go back to my stepdad, and he would have this words of wisdom. And he would always say, life is about balance. So what does that really mean? Well, I would say it kind of means, being balanced within yourself. And you may say, well, so what? What does that mean? That means I got to kind of stand down on one foot and make sure I have balance. Not so much like that, but in a way. And so ask yourself, like, as far as your priorities, are you out here feeling like everything is kind of attacking you? Or are you feeling like you're like in the driver's seat, kind of having control of everything, right? And think about it in terms of a vehicle. If you're driving on the car down the street and you're hearing this whoop, 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 with one of your tires, and let's say it's not aligned, you have those little weights on your tire. If it's not aligned, what are you going to notice? You're going to notice that every time you go down the road, you're going to just hear this annoying noise, right? Or the tire is going to pull one way, or it's just going to have this rough type of experience as you're going down the road. And at some point, it's going to destroy the tire, it's going to destroy the struts, or the alignment of the vehicle. Because at some point, when it's a little bit out of balance, you got to kind of bring it back in balance. And so I want to kind of talk about that today, right? And why is that important? Well, as I was maturing and realizing life's challenges, I realized that sometimes we have those situations that come in our life that force us to take a snapshot, right, in the moment and really ask ourselves what's really important. And typically they show up as it could be a scale, like a health scare, right? It could be a loss of a job. It could be a situation where a particular family member passes away. Um, it could be a certain trigger that you're feeling about something. Um, and although we have those challenges, as we sit within those challenges and we kind of work through them, we realize that it's forcing us to really take stock, like take an evaluation and say to ourselves, okay, what can I do to get more balance? Right. Um, Interestingly enough, I've shared this with you guys many, many times. I've been kind of working on my own personal journey with health, right? I'm in the mental health space, and I had to kind of, I've been having some challenges with my dad, my real dad. I've shared that before. And as he and I have been having conversations, it's really kind of helped me to kind of take a step back and ask myself, okay, where is it in myself that I could be more balanced, that I could be more healthy, right? Um, Mental health is great, but everything aligns. So it's all about that spiritual, right? It's all about the physical, as well as the mental, and they all kind of work together. And so, how does this connect to balance? Well, think about it. So, if you're doing one thing and you're focusing on that one thing, what do you think happens? Well, you get good at that one thing, but what happens is you get really weak at the other things. And so it's good to practice different things, because what happens is actually a couple things happen. For me personally, what I realized was sometimes when you put a lot of energy in one thing, what happens is you're not as sensitive to other aspects of your life. I would say for me as a male, we have a masculine, we have a feminine aspect of ourselves. And um, basically it's energy. And some of it is like knowing how to take action with things and knowing how to receive things, right? Um, and as you practice both balancing those things, you realize they're both very, very important, right? Very, very important, right? And so as I've developed certain friendships here, I've noticed that, like, situations where I have to stop and just say, hey, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to just spend some time with me and make a meal for me, or invite me to the Mariners game. Congratulations to the Mariners, by the way. They got that first game, they won. So hopefully we'll see how they do. But we have situations where, just taking a stop and just saying, hey, you know what? Thank you. That's important, because I feel like you have to honor people while they're here, because people are only here for a certain period of time. But also too, like, people feel really good when they know that you just acknowledge them. If you just say, hey, you know what? I appreciate you. Thank you. There's that feel good hormone, oxytocin, but also just like people feel like you see them, right? That's important. People want to be seen, but also too, um, it gives you another point of view, right? And so I've noticed, for me personally, as I've been going for walks, as I've been eating healthy, losing a little bit of weight, I've noticed that it's opened my mind to different points of view. Um, Looking in terms of nature, nature provides for us so many things. Um, and so one thing that I would ask or request for those people that are paying attention is, um, what are you doing that's natural? Like, try to do more natural things. And I'm sharing that because I noticed for myself, as I'm dealing with my dad, a little bit older, um, him just getting out of a chair has been a challenge. And so as I've been going to the gym and walking and spending time in nature, I ask myself this question: what are some things that I can do that's more functional? Like things that we take for granted, like getting up and out of a chair, right? We take that for granted. Standing up, right? We take that for granted. We realize those things when we're basically healing, or we've had an operation, or we're sore, or something like that effect. But even when we come into this world, the first thing we learn how to do is what? Is walk, right? Um, Stabilize our muscles, balance, becoming functional, moving around. And then we get older and all of a sudden we kind of get away from that. And so what I've been working on myself is becoming more functional, right? Doing more calisthenics, more push-ups, just, bear crawls, just becoming more in tune with my body, right? If you notice, we have the right, the left part of our body, right? What are you doing to create balance for yourself? And typically everybody has like one aspect of their body that's a little bit out of tune, right? I know for me personally, I have like one side of my body is a little longer than the other side. So I have a certain walk. People are like, "Hey man, you walking like you cool." No, I'm not walking. I'm not trying to walk like I'm cool. It's because one of my legs is longer than the other. So it may look like I'm cool, but I'm just being authentically myself. But at the same time, what are we doing to try to balance that, right? Are we compensating or overcompensating for those challenges, or are we really trying to balance those things, right? We take those gifts or those particular struggles that we have and we turn it into something that's beneficial for us, right? And so how do we balance that? Well, I would say one thing that I do is we have to be open-minded about things, right? We have to be honest with ourselves, and that's a challenge for some people, right? If somebody call you out, are you aggressive? Are you defensive? Are you really taking a step back and saying, you know what, you're right, you're right, you know? And I like to keep it 100, right? And so I remember I was working with an organization here in Seattle, and I played tennis. And one gentleman I met, and he was like, "Hey, you know what? Let's play tennis." He's like, "But you're a little you're a little fat there, Larry, right?" And I looked at him and I was like, "Yeah, you're right, bro. I'm a little fat." He's like, "You got to get in shape." And I didn't take it personal, right? I was like, "Yo, you know what? You're right, bro. You're right." But it actually was like a motivation, right? Because when you're a little leaner, you're quick around the court, all that. And so I'm like, "Yo, let me start small. Let me start walking. Let me start getting caught up with the kettlebell. Start playing my little Rocky music, da da da. You know what I'm saying? Getting motivated, trying to fight, get myself back on point." But I appreciate that balance because it was a realization, right? Sometimes we tell ourselves lies, right? And the fact that he said, "Hey, man, bro, you got to get in shape," but he also said it's for you. Like he expressed a situation where he had a family member that passed away. Obesity as well as high blood pressure runs in our family, and he was real, like, and I'm like, you know what, you're right, bro, you're right. And sometimes we gotta have those realizations, right, to say, you know what, I need to do something different. So if I'm way out of alignment over here, what can I do to swing the pendulum back the other way, right? But we got to be careful. We can't swing it all the way back, right? We have to have a little bit of a swing so that we can create some balance, right? But I'm curious, you guys tell me, what are some things that you think will be beneficial for balance? How do we balance ourselves as far as relationships, right? Also in terms of balancing meals, that's a big thing that I've noticed too. I've noticed since I've started cooking for myself and making sure that I have like some fiber, as well as a protein, a little bit of a grain, a little bit of a sweet. Um, Certain things I've noticed within myself that I don't crave certain things because I'm getting certain types of things in my food. Very, very important, right? Just how it all kind of connects. I noticed in the past, I would eat certain things based on like a stress level or maybe a traumatic experience. And so now I'm like, wait a minute, if I have a balanced meal, then that way I'm getting my healthy fats, I'm getting the proteins, I'm getting the grains, I'm getting the fiber, I'm getting some healthy carbs, right? I realized, you season up some broccoli, some vegetables, a little bit of butter on that bad boy. You season up right, man. It's like it's the best hookup, right? With the nice little chicken or beef or whatever. It's actually a very fulfilling meal. And I'm communicating this to you guys because I think it's important to take one step, right? Change is the only constant, but it's also very challenging to do if you just jump like feet first into it, right? And so I recommend take one step. So ask yourself, what's one thing you could do to try to have more balance in your life, right? If you're noticing that maybe you are aggressive with yourself, what are you doing to be kind? Maybe find a kind channel on YouTube, maybe an audio book, find an audio book that you can get caught up with. For those people that need some recommendations, a couple books I would recommend. One book I would recommend is a book called The Four Agreements, but by I think it's Juan Luis. Very, very powerful book. And I think he has a new one called The Fifth Agreement. Very, very powerful book. Highly recommend that. And it basically talks about just four agreements that you communicate to yourself and to other people, right? Simple things that take time, that you work on constantly, constantly. And it makes a difference. Does that mean you're perfect? No, but you're working towards those things, right? You're holding yourself accountable to some things, right? If you tell yourself certain things, you hold yourself accountable to those things. Also, too, if you can, I recommend having a person like to hold you accountable. Accountability partner, I think is important. Somebody who cares about you, who has the same interests, but at the same time, it's a good vibe as far as balance within that relationship. That's important. If you notice that you get triggered when somebody is aggressive, then maybe you have somebody that is a little bit more communicative, right, to help you with that. But also you still need to deal with that person who's aggressive, but do it in a way where it is allowing you to grow, but also face your uncomfortabilities. And I would say that's a big challenge too. How do you face your uncomfortabilities, right? I would say the big thing for that, for myself, is, again, start small, right? For those people that have been paying attention, I have been cooking lately. And it's been a very cool experience, actually. There's this organization called First Circle, for those people that know. Basically, these are local farmers here in Washington State that have organic food. It's all organic food. And basically, you can order up weekly organic food based on the box amount. They have different plans. I'm on the veggie plan because I noticed prior to, I would eat a lot of meat or eat a lot of fast food or eat a lot of stuff that I like. But I realized that in order for me to create balance, I have to take certain things that I may not be accustomed to, but that doesn't mean that my body doesn't need it, right? And so when I started thinking about it from that perspective, like, okay, I have to have some salts, I have to have some bitters, I have to have some sweets, I have to have some starches, I have to have some proteins. I have to kind of mix up some things that my body needs. And when I started thinking about it like that, like we have this system, all these systems in our body that have to work harmoniously together. And I asked myself, what am I doing to create the balance within myself, right? And be honest. Okay, so if I'm overweight, what are some things I'm not doing that I need to change, right? And so part of that is making sure that I drink water instead of sugary drinks. Being mindful as far as my mineral as well as my caloric intake. That's really important. Again, balance. Am I eating just to eat or am I eating to get full? Right. And then also, like, taking a step back, make sure I do a detox, right? Clearing out some systems, clearing out some things, starting new, right? Sometimes when the room is junky, you can't really see things around you. And so you have to kind of clear things out so you can have a fresh start, right? I think that's important. And again, start small, right? You might need to say, okay, I need to take a walk. Or, you know what? I noticed that I have these relationship challenges with some friends and family. Maybe I should start talking to one family member to try to bridge that gap. And if you're struggling with knowing how to reach out to that family member, you can reach out to us here at the Maassen Group, 1@gmail.com. We'll gladly support you with that. Or you might need to reach out to a friend, right? Sometimes having a conversation with a friend could be beneficial to kind of help you mitigate the process with that, right? But also making sure that you are balanced within your emotional regulation. That's important. If you're coming to somebody aggressive, that's going to put them in a space where they're not going to feel like they can receive you. So it's important to make sure that you are, open to what their suggestions are. Very, very important with that. Okay. All right. I'm curious to see, what do you guys think? as far as balance? Did I talk about some things that you think are relevant? Do you feel that you have good balance? What happens if you're out of balance? Like, how do you get it back focused? Think about the relationships you have. Like, are you a narcissist and maybe your mate is an empath, right? Or maybe you're in a relationship where it could be emotionally frustrating, right? Maybe one mate has more money than the other mate, right? Or maybe it's a balanced relationship. Maybe you guys support each other, right? What are you doing? What are some things that you're constantly doing to support yourself with that? So I'm curious to see, what do you guys think about that? What do you got? What could we do to have more support for one another? If you're weak in the area, what do you do to get support? Right. Um, I know for me personally, you know, for me, I'm weak as far as the working out piece. And so I connect with people who are really good with that. And ironically, I'm an athlete. Like back in the day, I played competitive tennis. And so I know muscle memory's there. But I also feel like life started lifing, priorities switched. Um, and I think I prioritized more, bringing home the bacon, so to speak, making sure I had the resources to take care of stuff. Not saying that's important. It's important to make sure you can feed your family. But at the same time, again, you got to have that balance, right? If you have children, how can you connect with your children, right? They got to learn how to play. In that example I gave earlier, my stepdad, we played. That's really important. If you only see dad working all the time, right? How do you know how to play, right? That's another key element too, so that you know how to play, right? And have that balance, because it's important to work hard, but you also got to have fun and play too, right? Balance is very, very important. But also too, um, making sure you cultivate that inner child within yourself, right? I've noticed since I've been out here in Seattle and spending some time in nature, I've been seeing a lot of the cool factors of stuff, right? Seeing certain hummingbirds and seeing eagles and just getting caught up in the awe of life. I think that's important, because I think it kind of keeps you in tune with like the realness of life. I think sometimes if we get so much into a pattern, we can easily forget that. Like we say, oh, okay, I'm working on this goal, and we're focusing on it. And sometimes we don't see the forest through the trees because we're focusing on that one tree. And so I think it's important to kind of take a step back and step back a couple more times so that you can get the whole forest, right? And then you can really see the hue of the forest, right? You can see the different colors of the greens and how it creates a forest, right? And I think it's important for you to do that daily, right? And so, are you doing mindfulness meditation, right? Do you have a good playlist that you're rocking out? I think that's important. You got to have a good playlist, right? Why is that important? Well, music as well as good lyrics, I think that allows that kind of what I've noticed for myself is when I'm listening to really good music that has some really good lyrics, what happens is it puts me in a certain state, right? A mental space. It could be while you're cleaning up the house, right? In an action mode where you're cleaning up the house, or maybe you have to do a task that's a little bit of a challenge. The music you can kind of roll on the notes, the vibration of the notes, and kind of get through it. But also too, I feel like the task that you're handling, it allows you to embrace it better with helping with the discipline. For those people that work out, typically when you work out, do you have like your theme music, right? Do you have certain music you listen to when you're working out? Daniel, you have any music you listen to when you work out? Probably, I don't know. But anyway, yes, it's good to have like good music, that's going to motivate you, inspire you, or elicit a thought, right? It can also too think about in terms of like when we're watching movies, right? When you watch a movie, what do you notice? The music kind of puts you in that mood, right? And if you notice the music, there's a balance to it. There's a calmness, but there's also crescendo where it gets a little louder, and all of a sudden it kind of flows with it. There's a harmony to it, right? And I feel like think about the things that you really enjoy or you appreciate, right? You really appreciate things that have balance, right? If you're looking at something and it's circular or it's round or it looks asymmetrical or it looks symmetrical, it kind of draws you to it, right? And so I'm sharing that with you because you notice that as you start to balance your life, and reprioritize, you know, the love in your life, loving yourself, loving those people who love you back, honoring yourself, you know, taking care of your commitments, you know, being a man of your word, you notice that what you put out starts to come back, right? And as you get older, you realize too that as you harmonize with the things that are around you, then what happens is those things start to harmonize back, right? And you get, I would say, what I would call a more fulfilled life, right? I didn't say perfect, but I would say more fulfilled, right? And also too, I would say the challenges that you have to deal with, they, as you embark and push through those, what happens is your resiliency gets stronger. I would say your strength gets stronger. I would say your fortitude gets like fortified. Your discipline, I think, gets more on point or strengthened as well. Your commitment for what you're building, but also too, I think it sharpens what your particular goals are too, right? Because you get to a point where you realize what you'll stand for and what you won't stand for. Okay. So I'm curious to see what you guys think about that. Feel free to shout back and say, hey, you know what? We appreciate the balance. Send us some comments and let us know. Just so you know, Lit Line Sports, the 500th episode will be tonight at 7 o'clock. Tomorrow, Seattle City Council debate. Possibly at 8 to at 6 o'clock. Thursday, high school football game of the week. Number one O'Day at Ballard at 7 o'clock. Make sure you guys check that out. And then next Tuesday, the 21st, King County executive debate will be at 5 o'clock. So make sure you guys take a look at that. And make sure you guys show some love for the next person to be coming on, Dr. Tracy Harrell. Living better together and living powerfully. Make sure you guys show her some love. And guys, go back. Let me know what you guys think. Did you think that balance is important? What are some things that we could do to have more balance in our world? So I want to say thank you guys. Appreciate you guys. I'm signing off now, and I'll see you guys next week. All right, guys. Woo.